Thank you so much for being here with us on the XY Spark podcast. This is your boy, your men's life coach, Rolando. And today we are just really happy to have a special guest with us. This is a very busy man, but we connected. I said, hey, I would like you, would you be okay to come and share with my listeners your work? And all the powerful stuff that you're doing in the community. And he said, hey, Roland, know what? It's not a problem. You say when, and I'll be there. So this morning, I want to introduce you to our special guest, Dr. K. Please, Dr. K, welcome. Please introduce yourself to the community here.
Thank you, Rolando, and interviewing for the podcast. I'm very happy to be a part of this podcast because we're going to discuss something very contemporary, such as men's health, men's victimization, and also support for men who go into depression and others. So myself, my name is K. Jaishankar. So K is my father's name actually in India, South India, especially we keep our father's name as a surname. Not we don't keep a kind of other kind of traditional surnames. So we keep the names also in the front side rather than the back side. So K is my father's name called Karappanan, and my name is Jaishankar. So you can call me K or Jai. It's both the same only. So I don't have any issue on that. But either way, to introduce myself, so I'm a criminologist working in the field for the past 30 years. So I completed a PhD in criminology, and then I continued as an academic, worked as an assistant professor, rose to the level of full professor and the dean and HOD in two universities. Then I then came out and started my own startup in 2022 in Bangalore called as International Institute of Justice and Police Sciences. So over the period of these 30 years, there were many areas of research I have worked, especially on crime mapping, then cybercrimes against women. But at one point of time, I find that there are kind of a lot of studies on women. We found that especially on cybercrime against women or physical crime against women, and find that there is a big lacunae that there is no study which is analyzing the victimization of men. In fact, they are the large number of people who are victimized in any cases. When you see the crime data, okay, so probably the women victimization is happening in few areas such as sexual assault and others. But when it comes to robbery, when it comes to murder and other forms of crime which are graver in nature, so you'll find more men are victimized. But the society and the criminal justice agencies do not address significantly on man's issue because it is pro-feministic oriented systems have emerged in the period, and it is not taking care of the needs of men, and men are always seen as perpetrators. That's a very unfortunate thing, I would say, and rather than victims. So that's how I turned my research from 2013 onwards on crimes against men, and conducted conferences where I invited papers, but unfortunately many papers did not turn up in that area. But very recently, you will find in the context of India, many cases of men victimization has happened, and the media is making a furor that it is time that the reverse discrimination should stop and men should be given their due, and they should be recognized by the criminal justice agencies. So that's the brief I would say that how the 360-degree shift from working on crime against women to crime against men.
Wow, thank you, Dr. K. And guys, I appreciate the work that Dr. K is doing. And last week we had our guest, we had Jared Whitaker last week, and he reflected a similar thought to what Dr. K is saying. And look at what's very important here. Jared is in the UK. Dr. K is in India, and they are sharing a similar storyline that there doesn't seem to be a lot of recognition for the reality that men are victims of abuse and neglect in the society, right? And Doc, you said you have been in the field for 30 years, and I'd just like to, ask you, Doc, can you share with us what are some of the common threads that you've noticed uh, in this community as it relates to lack of support for men?
One point, see, I've talked in the context of India, where India is traditionally a patriarchal society, which thinks that men are superior and fathers are superior in the family. But unfortunately, they have kept a lot of social burden on the head of the men, and they have to take care of the women, not only one woman, but they have to take care of the sister, they have to take care of the mother, they have to take care of the wife, and it's a continuing process. See, unlike in the Western nation, you would find the burden or the responsibility of the parents ends at one point of time. For example, after 18, people are given independence, autonomy, and they have to take care of themselves. But it is not in the case of India. Until death, that the parents' control over the children is there, and the father's control over the children is higher. So not only that, because of that, the father also undergoes a lot of stress because he has to take care of them continuous mode. You just imagine, even after a child is 18, they have to support for the education, they have to support the marriage. They and in India, sometimes the marriage goes very heavy kind of a investment. So, and again, if some divorce happens, again the parents have to support, and especially all this comes to the head of the family, that is the man. Okay, and again, the Indian law is supporting women more than the men in terms of alimony and maintenance. So more maintenance, you would find that the law says that it is the mandatory duty of a man to take care of his wife and children and the old parents. So suppose a man is not doing that particular work, then he will be arrested even. So there was a recent Supreme Court judgment which says that even the man can go beg, borrow, steal, but he cannot do this, that he cannot stop helping their women or children. And that is a problem that which we are finding, where even though many of the women are now empowered. So those were the days long back where less women came to the academia study. But here you will find that majority of women are now coming up. But still, I would not say that there are some women uneducated or illiterate in the rural parts, but in the urban parts, many people have come. But when it comes to the case of divorce and alimony, I find that the women are torturing men in many cases. And in India, recently, many men are committing suicides because they are not able to afford the alimony or the cost of the courts. They have to travel, they have to go again and again. And in India, justice system is very slow and it takes a longer time for the judgment. And that gives a kind of a mental duress for men. And there is no organization to support. In India, if there is 5,000 NGOs working on crime against women, there may be hardly you can count at 10 working for men. So it's
Wow,
a
wow, wow. You
um,
know, Doc, you
mm,
know, what you're saying, it's so true because, and I think it may be similar here in Canada. And why I say this is, I spoke with a number of men who one guy told me this as you talk about the justice system, and I'm going to make an appeal here on the podcast to all our judges and those who work in those roles. And I don't know if our judges ever even take the time to listen to a podcast from me, mean XY Spark, what is that? But I'm going to make the appeal anyhow, Doc. Because one guy said this to me, as I hear you say, a guy, he's told, hey, if you have to sell bottles, if you have to steal, whatever, but you need to provide for your family. One guy told me that he was told this by a judge once when the judge laid down the expectations of the province or of the federal court about the amount of money that he's supposed to pay up for his alimony, and he said, your honor, I can't afford it. And the judge responded to him by saying, when he told the judge, hey, I can't afford it, I can't afford to live, I won't be able to continue to live. And the judge said to him, well, listen, I don't care if you sleep under a cardboard box, right? Now, when he told this to me, it broke my heart because I'm saying, is it that when you're a judge, you're not supposed to have any compassion? Is it that when you're a judge, once a man stands in front of you and he's accused of something, whether he's guilty or not, it's a one size fits all? And how do we as a community support these men? Because you are right, Doc. In Canada alone, the suicide statistics is in 2023, there were over 4,000 suicides, and 75% of those were men. Okay, how do we support men when, and it not come across as, it's misogyny, misogyny, right? And I'm having a tongue tied there, right? Because it's almost as if it's a misogynistic community. And if men talk about these things, then there are feminist movements and all that say, hey, men have enough, they don't need it. It's all for girls. So how do we balance it out? Because I'm always wrapping my head around this, like, even for me as a man doing a podcast like this, I'm not sure how many women actually take time to listen to podcasts like these, because they may be thinking, what's your problem? You man up, be tough, right? So how do we get this message across? You work, in justice sciences and criminology. What do you think we can do, Doctor?
One point is that in the 21st century, feminism movement has grown for the past 60 to 70 years. But the radical feminism is now happening where people do not understand what is meant by feminism. Okay, feminism is what? It is giving the equal opportunity for women in the same spaces, in all spaces, and the respect and the dignity. But feminism is not a tool to abuse men. So that is what is now happening. Feministic idealists are now becoming warmongers, and they are taking swords instead of using shields. So the laws which are provided to them are not the swords. For example, the case of sexual harassment cases you have seen, the Me Too movement or something which are more kind of narratives, but that has become a vigilante justice, which is very unfortunate. Okay, so this mainly the Me Too movement came to have a cathartic effect where women can spell out their past. Okay, so any crime or any kind of harassment that happened somewhere 20 years back, when somebody is saying it's a catharsis, so they want to vent out the feeling. But what is happening now? Because of that, vigilante justice happened, and all the people or mobbing that particular person, and he or he becomes a kind of a perpetrator in the eyes of the common public and others, and it goes on and on. It is not stopping. If you see the Twitter, if you see Facebook, you will find that one particular person or two persons are always targeted by a group of people, and it is not only the feminists but also the men are attacking another men because they don't like them, and they use this as a chance. And there are very big people. Even you see Justice Kavanaugh or others in the US or other in India, a lot of people like that. So I'm not saying that whether this has been done, it has not happened. But what made people now to think that it is easier because of the social media era? In those days, you cannot have a cathartic movement. But the idea of catharsis is not equal to justice. So people like you who are psychotherapists, we can come and tell, and there's a catharsis. So, but this is not a justice movement, right? So you cannot go to the court and say that, oh, this has happened. So now this defamation of men is happening. There is no support for men, and women are now turning the laws for attacking. So this is a similar situation I find in the South African freedom movement, where after the South Africa got the freedom, white men were attacked, white men's house were attacked, and white women were sexually assaulted by black men. So this is the kind of same situation where the empowerment of women is not to abuse men, rather to empower themselves and to enjoy the same respect and dignity, and also should own the accountability. I am seeing that women are not holding the accountability. There are many cases of the kind of misuse of the laws which are provided in the Indian context of domestic violence, sexual harassment, and dowry-related cases. We are finding that false cases have increased a lot, and false rape cases have increased a lot. And the court, it takes 3 to 4 years to give a judgment. It's a false case. But what about the dignity of a man who lost in the eyes of their family, who lost in the eyes of the society? So he's the most victim. But after labeling for 4 years, then suddenly the court says that you are not a person who is a sexual offender. But what happens to that 4 years? That already the branding has happened. And then will it be easy? And will all the people read the court judgment and support the person? And there is also no difference between an accused in a case of a sexual harassment or a sexual assault. It is people, the moment the accusation happens, then immediately people brand them as a sexual offender, which is not equal, which is not correct. In a very recent case in Kerala, the judge said that clearly that it's not a gospel truth that any woman says is correct. Let the police decide initially whether the party is saying correctly or not. Check it. Just because somebody, a woman complained, just like that you put an FIR and file a case is not a correct thing. Hear both the sides. See, that's what principles of justice, natural justice called as audi alterum parte. Hear both the sides. But here the police, they are the doorkeepers of justice. So if they just roll the ball without any kind of a second thought, it will affect both the family, both the victim as well as the accused. Because in accused family also there are a lot of women, right? Their mother, their sister, and everybody. So it is also affecting some women also. So that is not seen now because of the patriarchal society. That man, if he loses a job, then automatically these three women are also in suffering. His wife, his child, or the mother or the sister. So that's another problem. So the question here is that when things are turning into radical things, the laws also turn into radical. Laws are still passed.
Yeah, Doc, thank you for saying that. And I wanted to establish one thing here. The XY Spark podcast does not support misogyny or misandry. So I want to make that clear. The XY Spark podcast is a podcast where we promote equality. And so what we're talking about here is not hatred of men or hatred of women. We're talking about recognizing that there needs to be a level playing field where men and women are being
That is what
treated.
I'm also coming in, putting into platform. You see, without telling the problem, we cannot go ahead because so that is the question. So I'm not trying to do some kind of a branding or anything on a or spreading a misogyny because I'm telling a
Yeah,
kind of exact situation what's happening currently in India and what are
yes,
the kind of cases in the media. So we are not,
yes,
in fact, I'm more feminist. So
yes.
I would like to encourage women's participation in many things. In some of the previous studies which I have done, cybercrimes against women, I have told that internet has become more patriarchal.
Hmm. Hmm.
People who are there in the real,
Yes.
they came to online and they stopped the progress of women. They cyberbully women, they abuse women. So women should not come into the thing. And for your information, internet or the cyberspace is the only space where women gets the maximum freedom. So
Ooh.
they can voice, they can do anything. But there also men are subjugating them. So I'm against, I'm a great voter against it. But I am talking about some contemporary cases or things which happened for the past 2 years. So
Hmm.
this, see, it's a kind of a volcanic situation I'm talking about. It
Yeah,
was slowly,
yeah,
slowly. Now we
yeah.
have gone to one situation. So we are not interested neither to promote misogyny or misandry. We want
Yes,
to have a level playing field where the
yes,
laws, the society, and the community or the stakeholders should be at one level where we are talking about equality and
yes,
anything should be gender neutral. So
yes,
whether it supports men, we are against. Whether it supports women, we are against. We are talking about
yes,
something inclusivity. That is what I am
yes.
talking.
Yes, yes. And Doc, I'm glad because that sometimes people will listen and they'll run away and not capturing the essence of what we're doing here on the podcast. And the aim is to seek to create a safe space where we can normalize conversations about men's mental health and also about the supports that we see. There's a huge gap, and the appeal is whether you're in India, you're in Africa, you're in Canada, you're in the Caribbean, right? Is recognizing that, hey, we want to appeal to some of the men who are not stepping up to step up. And we want to appeal to, let me give you an example, Doc. In Canada, there's been a huge blow up as it relates to murder suicides. Okay, and there was a huge demonstration that happened in Eastern Canada because in space of 3 months there were 6 cases of domestic violence where a few of them were murder suicides, that men were the aggressors. And, of course, the ladies were out in the streets and they demonstrated. And I can see why that was a huge thing. Okay. And, as I see it, I said that it is sad to see. And then my brain goes to what do we do to prevent that from continuing? And what could we have done to get to these men before they got to that place? Which is where my mind went, psychotherapeutically, because there would have had to be something that led up to this. What? Did these men have a safe space to go to process what was going on, and how do we, create a safe space that's ongoing so these men that can come up and say, hey, I'm struggling, right? Things are really crappy right now. I need help. And I find that that's a big thing, that that's a big piece, Doc, that's missing. As you said earlier, there are not enough supports for men. You know, when do we get there? Will we ever get there? I don't know, but what can we do?
Yeah, again, I'm not again posing men against women or women against men. I'm talking
Hmm.
any cases even where men are victimized by men itself. Many of the murders, many of the robberies, or many of the frauds against men are happening by men. Even the
Hmm.
misuse of women laws, like sexual harassment, are done by men. They
Hmm.
know because they are behind the woman.
Hmm.
So it's like kind of they are using like a shield as a in the woman, and they are abusing this law because they want to attack their enemy. So I would not entirely blame the women community for what's happening now. I'm
Hmm.
also blaming the men community. One man against the other man. They pit a woman in center and they are playing games. So this is happening now because you see that is how many men are attacking another man because they are weak, so they cannot attack directly, so they are utilizing the system. So I think things should little bit change in the laws where, for example, you say maintenance of women and children. I abuse of that word. I don't like the word maintenance because you maintain your car, you maintain your dog, you maintain anything house, but men cannot or women cannot be maintained. Instead, you should say that livelihood support. That is a
Hmm.
correct word for
Hmm.
that. Instead of calling maintenance of women and children, you say livelihood support for women and children because of the fact that man is earning, woman is not earning, and the child
Hmm.
is young. So, but there are many cases where man is earning, woman is also earning equally or sometimes higher. So, what happens in some cases where men they lose their jobs or they there's a divorce, so, but the weight still remains the same because the laws uh, came over a period. There is a transition of the laws. I'm not saying that victimization of women did not happen. Victimization of women happened a lot. That's why these laws came into picture. So
Hmm.
that's why the laws become pro-woman. But again,
Hmm.
pro-woman is a different one, rather that it is a kind of a gender neutral, giving a balance. That is what
Hmm.
we are looking into in this 2025. So again, we cannot go back and change the past. So that's why I'm telling you that we need to go rather than telling about always past. Past many things happened. India was a slave to British. Many things happened. So like that, men abused women. Many things happen. Now also there are cases. I'm not saying that in total crimes against women have reduced. It is continuing in some spaces. But at the same time, men are not that bad. So don't label them. And don't label one man has committed a crime. So the entire men community are bad. So that is what I am requesting. So you should not
Yes.
just
That
generalize.
that's so powerful, Doc. I love how you coined that, because it's something that, I'm passionate about, and in my role, I do offer domestic violence support for a lot of male offenders. Okay. And there are times when I do recognize that there are guys who they deliberately, they messed up once, right? I'm not excusing it. But then it's sort of a because, and there are guys who didn't mess up at all, but the law was taught, hey, if you get a call that there's something domestic going on, they are instructed to go in and take out the aggressor, which is normally the man. So there's no way on the planet, and Jared shared his story last week on the podcast. He's a big guy, he's 6'2", mean, muscle, really sort of, how you say, jacked up sort of a guy, right? When he made a call or when he showed up to report that he was abused, it's like, dude, get it together. How can you be abused? You're the abuser, not the abused, right? And so it poses a challenge because then I think the idea of sensitization, as it relates to some of our police officers who are going in, and what lens are they looking through? Are they able to go in and recognize that, hey, if I walk into a room, here's a guy, is head, he's bleeding, he has marks. Here's someone standing there saying, hey, he was abusing me, but when I'm looking at it, it's not matching up because how is it that he has all these scars and bruises and bloody and stuff, but then we're taking him out in court still, and we're not saying, hey, come, we're going together to really talk about what really happened, so we can create a safe space for both persons, both her and him, you
In
know?
terms of police, what I've seen is that they go for physical abuse only and see some kind of physically, some kind of a thing happen on the body of the person, whether it's a man or a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with men is not physical, it is psychological, it is mental.
Yes.
And they go into PTSD, they go into depression faster than women itself. So that is the problem. But the society, nor the criminal justice agencies such as police, do not recognize psychological abuse as an abuse. They only recognize more of physical abuse. So comparatively, you can see that men are physically stronger than women. So the initial labeling is very clear that the powerful man only will abuse a powerless one, because this is the equation where it is physically seen. But mentally, there is nothing like that, that women are powerful or men are powerful. Both are equal in terms of psychological thinking. And sometimes women are more powerful in certain spaces. That I have told earlier in one of the interview, where a crocodile, when it comes outside the sea to the land, it loses power. Like that, many men within a family system, they lose the power because they are arrested in that kind of a situation where they have to give money to the wife or the mother, and sometimes the conflict between the parents and the wife, they are in between, they are crushed in between also, and they cannot take a chance also, so they want to balance. So many times men take some kind of balanced approach. They do not want to take a kind of a one-sided approach. If he takes a one-sided approach, the other party is angry, so that's how they take. But finally the victim is the person who is in between the other parties who are claiming for power. Because you see, in a family, it is also like the politics in the society. Everybody wants some kind of things to share some power. So power is there in small, small thing. For example, previously when TV was there, only one TV is there. The who owns the remote matters a lot. So if the husband is owning the remote, then he will only watch the news and other things which he likes, cricket or something. And the wife, they will like whatever home programs or anything. So now who owns the remote is the powerful person at the time. But now that power has gone, because everybody is owning a mobile phone. Whatever program they want, they can see that in their bedroom. They can see in anywhere, even the bathroom also. So that kind of a power reduction has happened because of the internet and other. Okay, that didn't was not there. So the power was central, or it was never decentralized. So now the power is coming in a very kind of a decentralized way, but the equation between women and men are changing in this 21st century in a very, very different way than others, because of the kind of freedom that internet is giving, where men and women can use their knowledge and they can get power and hold something on this.
Wow, thank you, Doc. That man, listen, guys, I'm telling you, this conversation is so loaded and powerful. And, Dr. K has 30 years of experience, so we could be here talking all day, right? But, Doc, we are going to wind down now. But just before we wind down, you know, can you tell us, you know, do you have any upcoming presentations? How can we connect with you? where do we find, because Doc, I really love to stay connected. I know you talked about the psychological piece and men were being psychologically impacted. And for me, for the past 15 years, I've really dedicated my life to, seeking to connect with more men at all levels to work through that psychological piece. You talk about the PTSD, the trauma, the depression, you know, uh, and that is really a big ticket item and a frequent trend that I've seen in my work as a psychotherapist. Okay. And so thank you for pointing that out. So, Doc, how could we continue to connect with you to, listen to some more of the work that you do
Yeah.
and all that?
I'm very active in social media, in LinkedIn. We are connected well. So automatically we can connect there. And I'm also posting a lot of posts which you would have seen. Debates I'm rising in cases with relation to sexual harassment cases or crime against women or crime against men. So I raise some debates at some time that people are also interested and they pose certain questions and they also raise debates. So that is one thing that is very enriching because these are kind of a platform where we can take our knowledge and also disseminate internationally. So that's I'm very happy because people from Venezuela, people from Guatemala, people from Canada, and others they are commenting on that. So not only discussion is routing or going around the Indian spaces, but also internationally. So widened perspectives on these are being brought out. So in terms of context of India, when we are talking about a society which is still emerging because of the slavery and others, the 75 years of independence. We are growing more. We are growing. It will take some time to come to the level of the kind of open society. We are still a closed society in some spaces. So becoming an open society is not that easier considering our past because India is several years old compared to many countries which are 500 or 600 years old, where they were able to construct everything new in a proper format. In India, we cannot construct that like that because everything is already done. We are only just making some repair. We cannot demolish the full structures.
Oh, thank you, Doc. So, folks, you heard it here, right? If you want to connect with Dr. K, he's on LinkedIn, he's on Facebook, he's normally posting stuff similar to the conversation that we had today. And what a conversation it was. Thanks again to Dr. K for coming in. And this is your podcast. This is the XY Spark podcast. This is a podcast for men where we seek to normalize conversations about men's mental health because our role and our goal is to seek to break the stamina of the stigma, to create neutrality where we are empowering more of our men psychologically. This is not about a physical strength, right? Men, we're physically in that space where we're talking about psychologically and emotionally empowering our men to be the best version of themselves. And this is how we're going to lessen the cases of domestic violence where men are, both victim and perpetrator. And this is where we seek to have men who are less depressed, less aggressive, men who are really being in that space of safe, healthy, and empowered, where we'll have healthier families and healthier communities. Listen, this is your boy, your men's life coach, Rolando. Thank you for joining us here on the XY Spark podcast. And we continue to remind you guys that at XY Spark, we believe that there is a spark in you. We will see you again next time. Have a great day.